Hello. Oh, it actually works. Good. Excuse my voice. I have none. So, we're here for a panel on Catalan literature. But we know that many of you are actually the experts more than us. Certainly more than me. I just publish a Catalan author, but Bernard is an agent. And
yeah, here we are. Basically, can you hear us well? Okay. Basically, the idea was to talk about like the increase in translations in the last years of specifically Catalan literature, but I think that we could also talk about like the growth of works in translation in the English market, no? Because I mean, when I was preparing the panel, I came into an article in the booksellers. It was like everywhere, because I was still always thinking, no, when my authors asked me about, I want to be published in English, and it's like, yeah, perfect, but you know, like English is very hard language, you know, for any foreign author to be published into, and we always tell them, no, that this famous 3% rule, no, that you must take into account that in the whole publishing, no, of a year in English, like only 3% are translations, no. But I just came to find this article on the bookseller a couple of weeks ago, and it seems it's now 6%, which is like double. It's amazing. So I also think this is something that needs some, well, or that deserves some kind of explanation. I wanted to ask you many things.
Well, maybe we should introduce ourselves slightly first, and we'll talk a bit. But really, your questions will be very welcome, and also your input, because I'm seeing familiar faces who I know translate from Catalan, have translated many books from Catalan, and have a lot to add in different ways. So, but I mean, I guess I'm here because we published this past year, 2018, Catalan author Alicia Kopf that won the Premio Documenta and then other prizes, Brother in Ice in English, or Germain de Gel. And we have also recently, in fact, we signed last week, but the signing just took a while. We knew it was going to happen. Another Catalan prize winner, this time represented by Bernard, also with ice in the title. So the Catalan title is Permagel, although it might be permafrost in English, by Eva Baltazar. So that's sort of, and I'm Stefan Tobler from And Other Stories. And I apologize for the voice. My wife and I have been sharing the meetings at the fair, so she was in the fair yesterday. And I was with the kids at the Natural History Museum, and it was a rainy day that was very busy there, and you had to talk very loudly. So I sort of lost my voice before I even arrived at the fair. And Bernard, can you tell us a bit about your representing Catalan literature?
Yeah, my name is Bernard Fiol. I own a small agency called Salmayalit, but I began working in publishing in 2001 in nowadays very powerful Spanish agency based in Barcelona. Then I moved into another agency also based in Barcelona. And we mostly represented Spanish-speaking authors at that time, but we had Carlos Ruiz Zafón, the author of The Shadow of the Wind, and it has just been published in Spanish a few months before I joined the agency. So I was in charge of foreign rights, so for me that was a very enriching experience, not because everybody was fighting everywhere in the world to get Zafón. And I began going to fairs, I began going up and down to visit publishers in their offices, like everywhere. And after a few years working in that agency, I just launched my own. Salmaya is Catalan word, but nobody uses it anymore. I liked it very much. It's I knew about the word because it's the title of an album, of a CD of a Mallorcan author, singer that I love. It means basically the kind of water you find when rivers merge into seas. So it's not salty water, but it's not sweet water anymore. And I liked it that, well, I think the agent is more or less that, no? Which is in between authors and publishers.
Are you saying that the authors are sweet and the publishers are sour?
Yes, they are.
Okay.
So more or less, that was the story, no? And from the beginning, I already, because of my origin, I was born in Mallorca. Catalan is my mother language, so I really wanted to have also Catalan authors in my list, no? Even though 10 years ago it was hard to sell them. It was not so evident. You have to do a lot of didactics to explain that Catalan was a language, blah, blah, blah. Things we all know nowadays, fortunately. But yeah, so I always wanted to have a few Catalan authors in my list, and now this grew a bit more.
Can you tell us some of the names of the Catalan authors in your list?
Yeah, I do represent. Well, now I have. All my Catalan authors, they come from two sources. Some of them, I represent them directly in front of their Catalan publishers and also abroad for translations. And amongst them we have Marta Urriols, who has been also very successful recently in the last few months. English rights were sold to Pushkin Press in September, October, not long ago. She just got a very important award back in Barcelona. Her book is doing wonderfully well. It's also published in Spanish. It's doing well there. Then I represent Yannick Garcia. That he's kind of a youngish author. He's very lazy as a writer. His last book was written in 2013-14. He got an award for young authors, but he's a very good translator, a very good literary translator. He's the translator of James Salter, like big names of Catalan, English language into Catalan. I also represent Neus Cañellas, who is a Mallorcan author. 7 or 8 books published, some of them with good awards. And I think that's it in terms of the ones I represent directly. And then I also represent some publishers, like Club Editor, which is a historical publishing house in Barcelona. They are the ones who own rights for Permafrost, Permagel, which is the one you acquired recently. But they also represent the rights of some classic Catalan authors. Maybe you've heard of Joan Sales, whose Uncertain Glory and The Winds of the Night were recently published in the UK by Maclehose, I think. Or other classics in the list include Victor Català, which is she was a woman writer, but she always used this Victor, which is a male name pseudonym. We just sold rights of one of her books to Open Letter in the US recently. And I also represent rights of another more modern indie publishing house called Edicions del Periscopi, which is kind of Periscope Editions.
And who also had another prize-winning book that had ice in the title.
Exactly.
Something funny going on about Catalan novels with ice in the title.
Yeah, we love ice. I don't know why. Exactly. So anyway,
because we don't have much of it.
Anyway, we
don't love ice here.
No, they come from there. But what I really wanted to ask you, like, how did you end up publishing Catalan Authors? When was the first time you felt like you should investigate?
So I mean, we personally are always open to books from anywhere, and through the authors that we already publish, or translators we know, or just other readers of a foreign language, different tips come in, as well as through agents and foreign publishers. And to some degree it's quite organic. So, our very first author was a Mexican author, Juan Pablo Villalobos, and he lived in Brazil for a number of years, and he knows Latin American literature in general really well, so he recommended a few other authors, including Yuri Herrera, Mexican author, who he then published, and then Yuri Herrera, through his reading, recommended other authors like Rita Indiana and Cristina Rivera Garza, who we've then published. So things for us have often grown fairly organically, and that certainly means that when you start to work, when you've published the first author in a certain language, it feels like then suddenly you start getting to know more people in that area, and then you get more tips. So The Alicia Kopf came about partly through being lucky enough to be invited to Barcelona with the Institut Ramon Llull on an editor's trip. And the Alicia Kopf had just at that time first won the prize for unpublished manuscripts, the Premi Documenta, and also won the Booksellers Prize and then a prize in Spanish. So it was sort of, and I was able to read the Alicia Kopf's translation into Spanish myself. So that helped because I can't read Catalan, although I hope one day to.
But was it the first Catalan book you considered, ever?
No, okay. We definitely had other books suggested to us and been interested, but somehow just not quite gone for the book enough, or found, in the case of Joan Sales, he was already taken. So, yeah, a mixture of either being too late or just not going for the book enough. Other books that looked interesting, didn't
exactly.
But Joan Sales sounds great. I still haven't read him because once we knew that other people were publishing him, then you're like, oh well, I'll read something that we can actually maybe publish.
I understand. And who's your best advisor when it comes to Catalan literature? Who would you hear, or take into consideration?
Well, so I think Per Mansell by Eva Baltasar is an interesting one because at the time that you sent me the Catalan manuscript, there wasn't a Spanish translation, so I couldn't read it myself. I always like to read it myself, and in that case, I saw that a lot of people were really liking it, so I just really, slightly at random, sent off a few emails and said, have you read it? And a few people, a mix of translators, but also Alicia Kopf's publisher in Catalan, Eugenia Brogi at L'Altra, who's here at the fair. She said she doesn't publish Eva Baltasar, but she said, "Oh, you should really go for it quick." And I always particularly think when someone is recommending it and they don't have an interest in it themselves, so they're not the foreign publisher and they're not a translator who wants to publish it, then I guess, or they're not the agent, then when it feels like it's a completely unmotivated recommendation, then always that is sort of adds to it, because I don't know, it somehow feels a bit pure. Not that I don't take account of all the recommendations, but I think the fact that she wasn't the publisher and she was so excited about the book, and also Alicia Kopf said, I haven't read it yet, but I've heard really good things from a lot of people. So there was a lot of people who had no interest in recommending it, but seemed really in favor of it. So we just, in the case of the Eva Baltasar, we've just taken the risk and said, all right, let's go for it.
Yeah, of course, sure.
And there was a sample in English too.
And just to go back to what I was saying at the beginning about this apparent increase of translated fiction, at least in the UK, how old is now Another Stories?
Our first books were published in 2011, so yeah, and it's sort of in that. And actually, if the situation then was what it is now, where there's a lot of publishers publishing translations and really good literary translations, I'm not sure that I'd have ever felt, the sort of the need to start Another Stories, because it felt very different back then. It didn't feel like there was a lot going on.
Yeah, but since the early 2010, 2011, around that time, you were saying that right now, there's been like a kind of a growth and of publishers who have just launched their businesses, and most of them are really focused on looking for translations. Why do you think that is?
Well, there's so many amazing books out there, and I guess quite a few of the new publishers doing translations have started out very small, so just working from home with very low overheads, and I'm glad we're not doing that anymore. But it is a great way to start, and it means there's a lot of new people have been able to get going, just with their laptop basically, working with freelancers, and then just putting all that energy into getting the book out there. And there are people that are a bit younger than us, like Tilted Axis and Charco Press, that are, as far as I know, still at that stage, and it is quite liberating, because you've got, with very low overheads, you can just go for it and really get behind a book that you like, and it's a good way to start. It's not a good way with little kids to carry on, and the more people start working with you, you can't fit everyone into the living room. But it's a good way to start, and I guess it's just the technology has partly enabled it. With broadband being what it is these days, most people can download big files and upload them and send them to whoever they're working with, and really you can be anywhere. I mean, in our first few years, Sophie Lewis was our editor, and she was living in Rio, and all that's definitely wouldn't have been possible 20 years ago. So I think really it's just, boringly enough, in a way, the technology is a big reason, and I think also thirst, because there's so much isolationism and xenophobia around that that also there's a real hunger for something which isn't part of that, to read things from other places. And it's exciting, even people who have nothing to do really with the publishing world or aren't particularly massive readers, but I'll bump into someone who'll say, oh yeah, me and my friends we want to make sure that every other book we read is a foreign book, or things like that, and or in translation. And I think, it does feel like people are aware that in the UK and in America we've been too focused on the homegrown stuff, and so it does feel like a good moment.
Exactly.
And of course, in the case of the Catalan literature, I mean, the availability of funding is massively important. Sadly, I think we were a bit too late to I think there was a time when the Institute Ramon Llull gave sort of 100% translation funding, and that's those sort of opportunities of knowing that there's a funding source available in the country where the book comes from makes a massive difference, because otherwise you might have a very big translation bill with probably not in any way covering that cost through the sales of your average literary fiction book, depending where you pay translators, but we and a lot of UK publishers do pay a sensible, reasonable amount for translators, rather than trying to just get something done as cheaply as possible.
Exactly. And another thing I was thinking, I'm just looking at the list of recent Catalan books, novels published, is that most of them are very literary books. It's that there's no so much translation of commercial literature, like kind of women's fiction or crime or this kind of stuff into English. So why do you think that is? Do you think there is the readership is people who read in English is more interested?
I don't think I think it's more just the people in the publishing houses, and my guess would be that most of the polyglot editors who can read some foreign languages are in the more literary publishing houses, and that probably a lot of, and I might be being very unfair here, but maybe there are less people in some of the crime imprints who can read as many foreign languages. I don't know.
Probably.
I might be wrong. But I mean, yeah. What do you think? Should we open it up to?
Yeah, exactly. We never said, but if you have comments, questions, or anything, feel very free to just interrupt us whenever you want, and
like now,
and ask us things. No.
So one thing.
Yeah, was one question there. Yeah.
Hi there, sorry, I missed the very beginning, so I'm hoping you haven't covered this already. I just wanted to ask a quick question about the sort of channels that you go through for the actual translation process. I work from Spanish into English, actually the last two things I've done have been theatre pieces, but they were both originally Catalan, and I've worked from the Catalan playwrights' self-translations. Funnily enough, one of them did a lot of rewriting on the fly, so I had the two versions and I could see all sorts of things had changed. And the other one hadn't, it was pretty straight. So how committed are you to working directly from the Catalan into the English? Do you think that matters? Is it feasible? That's my question, really.
I mean, from Anders Story's point of view, I think we would always want to work from the original where we can, and particularly it seems in a situation where there are such strong feelings about a minority language, it would seem wrong to then translate from the Spanish somehow. And yeah, so no, I would say if there are any of you, I don't know, how many of you are translators? How many of you are translators from Catalan? So are some of you translators from Spanish but not Catalan? Okay, all of you should definitely get into the Catalan thing because there are not so many translators from Catalan.
That's true.
There are so many translators from Spanish. Life would get easier for you if you also translate from Catalan. I'm sorry for letting the secret out to those of you who are Catalan translators. And also apparently, I don't know if this is true, but I think like the Institut Ramon Llull has like funding for people who already translate from Spanish to go and spend time in Barcelona and become translators from Catalan.
Hello. If as a translator you have a contract to translate a literary book, a book from Catalan into another language, there's a grant to come to Barcelona and spend 4 weeks there translating that book. But the contract has to be signed because we have to make sure that the book gets published.
Oh, I thought there was also some like training for translators from Catalan. Or...
Yeah.
We keep on doing different seminars for translators, but not specifically for the ones that come from the Spanish into and they want to translate into Catalan. It depends on the language. We did that with Turkish translators. We did that because in Turkey we found out that there was not enough translators from Catalan into Turkish, and at the same time there's a lot of interest in Turkey about Catalan books. So one translator had a queue of 3 years to translate all the books, and that was really bad for us. So what we did is we did a seminar in Barcelona for a week with French translators and Spanish translators from Spanish and French into Turkish, and because they are all Romance languages, so we trained them to start becoming translators from Catalan as well. We did that with Hebrew as well.
Oh, cool.
So, out of those of you who translate from Catalan, I want to know what have you translated? I'm sorry, but you need to speak. You were a translator? Let's wait for the...
Maria Barbal.
Okay, which one?
Pedra de Tartera.
Yes, Pedra de Tartera.
Yeah.
What was the English title?
Stone and Landslide.
Okay.
Sí. Joan Brossa.
Cool. But plays or poetry or
poetry for MACPA.
Okay.
Last year. Luisa Cunillet.
I didn't hear you.
Luisa Cunillet.
Okay.
Yeah. And the minutes of the seminar in November, because I went as the Catalan English translator. I did the minutes of that meeting. I can't remember what else right now. I don't remember what else right now, but yeah.
Okay, but you have you really noticed that in the last years there's been an increase of demand of?
Yeah, hugely.
Why do you think it is?
Because I remember I did my masters at the same time Stefan did, and a translator asked us our language groups, and I said Spanish and Catalan, and she said to me then, that was 2006, and she said, "You're going to get more work from Catalan than from Spanish." And I said, "Oh, really?" And she said, "Yeah."
Yeah.
And I did a paper at a university, like in 2009, and I had to explain what Catalan was at that point, and they teach Catalan in that university, and there was people who didn't know what it was.
Exactly.
And now if I say I'm a translator from Catalan, people go, oh. And I think partly it's because the political situation and the culture has become much more visible than it was before. So when I studied Catalan, people didn't know. Like my mom was saying, "What is the point? Why are you doing this?"
Yeah,
and now I work more with Catalan than from Spanish.
Yeah, like me as an agent, I remember like 10 years ago, or when I began in early 2000s, I had to really explain editors, foreign editors, that Catalan was another language, that my authors, well, some of them wrote in Spanish, but some didn't. Yeah. And they always said, but why I can't read them in Spanish? It's like, because there's no Spanish publishing house that has wanted to translate them, And there has to be a lot of didactics, so that's what I said, fortunately, at the beginning of the talk, because nowadays, almost like everyone knows and understands that Catalan is a language on its own, and it has a very, 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 very long literary tradition, like any other Romance language in Europe, basically. But yeah, you're very right. Who else has someone down there?
I mean, I'm thinking about it when you're asking it. The last 3 plays I've translated have actually all been Catalan. But I've worked in this funny triangular way where I've worked with the Catalan and the Spanish in front of me, because they self-translate, not so that I can translate, but so that the play can be produced and performed in Spain. Guillem Clua, who's a Spanish Catalan player, he's got La Golondrina touring just now with Carmen Maura, and then a couple of plays by Jordi Casanovas.
Jordi Casanovas, I don't
Malabroma,
ring a bell, but
Malabroma is one of them. Idiota is the other one.
Okay.
He's just done a play about the La Manada.
Okay.
Jauría,
and and did they go into the stage here, or were just?
Well, 2 of them are speculative. One of them, Golondrina, has been on the stage.
That's cool.
It was actually on the stage in English before it was on the stage in Spanish, and then it went back into Spanish.
Okay.
And it's gone off into lots of other languages, not into Catalan yet, funnily enough.
Okay.
Written in Catalan but not performed. So that's a separate issue, and it is an issue for Catalan playwrights. One of the reasons why they self-translate is because they don't necessarily get access to the Catalan stage, despite writing in Catalan. So there's all kinds of complexities going on there.
Good.
But it has spurred me, it has made me think, no, maybe I need to just up it and get deeper into the Catalan rather than relying on this parallel version.
Thank you. Thank you.
I'll go, Richard. No, I was just going to say, Richard Mansell's. Anyone interested in Catalan literature? Richard Mansell teaches at the University of Exeter and has pulled together research which some of you might have seen, or you can find him on Twitter and on the interwebs at the University of Exeter, and he I think is willing to share his research on what's been translated most widely into different languages. Richard.
Thank you. My question goes back to something that you said back in 2009, that publishing is supply plus demand plus magic. So for both of you, what is magic about Catalan literature? I'm actually going to say Catalan language literature with my Mallorcan head on, but thinking of the Valencians and Andorra and South France and so on as well. What's so special about Catalan literature? What makes it different to other literatures out there?
What makes it different? Maybe it's not the answer I was supposed to give, but I don't think it's especially different. I think it's as any other literature. It's good. I mean, it doesn't need to. We don't need to find like a special motive or a special reason to make it or better or whatever than any other thing. I mean, I think that one of the nicest thing that has happened in these last 10 years is that nowadays publishers like Steve, they just see Catalan books as something normal, as they can see an Italian book, French book, or a Dutch book, no? And that's no, don't you think so?
Yeah, I mean, I think Alicia Kopp's book could have easily been written in another language. I don't see it as somehow embodying any Catalan essence, but I do think that that the fact that there is such a strong movement to assert Catalan identity and culture has had a really positive impact on the literature scene, and I'm sure on all the art scenes, in the same way that the Scots have got a really great publishing culture, and so many amazing authors, you know, in the UK are Scottish, and I think I don't think it's a coincidence. I think, you know, I think you get a government, you get a lot of energy and also money put into programs that really mean that there's a lot of opportunities for new authors to come up, and a lot going on. I mean, you know, Edinburgh, Barcelona are such amazing cultural centers, and I think sometimes smaller countries, you know, if we're calling Catalonia a country, smaller countries have that energy because they know they have to assert their culture in, you know, against a dominant other. And for example, I mean, Alicia Kopp's book, the first thing that brought it out was the Premi Documenta for unpublished Catalan writers. That was, I mean, it was one of the reasons that we then, at And Other Stories, when we moved to Sheffield, set up the Northern Book Prize, because we thought it was a really great way just to tell people you're looking for the best that's unpublished. You want people to send it in, and there'll be judges reading it all. And if you look back at, say, Premi Documenta, which is now in its 36th year, I think, you know, and you look back and you see a lot of the names that are, you know, the great and the good of Catalan literature have come up through things like that. And it just seems, and then, you know, with someone, you know, in Institut Ramon there, I mean, there are just so many good things happening, encouraging Catalan literature, that I'm sure a lot of those authors might have never got published in another situation. How many people, what's the Catalan-speaking population?
5 million? For the Catalan-speaking is like...
Right.
Exactly, so it's around 5 or 6 million people who normally use and read and communicate in Catalan.
You see, possibly this is a reason why Yorkshire should be an independent country too. We'd suddenly have lots of good new writers coming forward.
Yeah, and also, like, I think, like, for you as an publisher based here, the promotion of all your books in the catalog is kind of important. And I think that you managed to have Alicia Kopp's, what was the translation in English? Brothers of Ice? Brothers in Ice?
Brother in Ice.
In Ice, that's what I... Okay, so...
Yeah, Brother of Ice somehow in English, which is the direct translation, sounded, yeah, I don't know, some sort of kind of X-Men film or something, I don't know.
So in order to promote them, to help them spread and make... and be available to the readers. You did a very good job in getting the book being nominated to awards, and how did you do that? I mean...
Well, I mean, we sent it in for all the available awards, and it was last year, it would have been in the running for the Man Booker International, but, you know, they, in their wisdom, they overlooked it for some reason. No, we were quite disappointed on the award scene. We thought it should have got more attention in English than it did, but you just, you know, you can't tell. But it got great reviews, and some really prominent authors and reviewers. For example, the wonderful reviewer for the Irish Times who reviewed a lot of translations, Eileen Battersby, who very sadly died in a car crash at the end of last year. She'd done a great review of it, and even in the Irish Times obituary for her, they mentioned, you know, her review of Brother in Ice. So we felt really happy. But, you know, certainly reviewers generally have no problem with translation, and some English newspapers do seem to. The Daily Telegraph only ever reviews our English language authors. The Sunday Times is pretty close to that. We certainly felt it when the Independent stopped as a newspaper, because they were great too. So yeah, you just do what you can with what's available.
Yeah, exactly.
Any more questions? Yeah.
Hi. This is a question for Bernat, and without going into any controversial topics.
It's so noisy. I'm so sorry, but I can almost.
Because you work in the publishing industry in Catalonia, I was wondering what effect, in your view, has the political situation had for the publishing industry? I mean, we've talked a little bit about how, in some ways, in the last few years, everything that has happened has put Catalonia on the map internationally, and that's great for translated literature from Catalonia. But I wonder about other effects that you have noticed maybe in the last couple of years. Is the political situation affecting the publishing industry in some ways, in your view? In bad or good ways?
Publishers are making a lot of money publishing books about about all this that's going on now. St. Jordi's Day is coming in a month, and all publishers have politicians publishing their books and telling their version of the story. No, but now more seriously. I think it's yeah, it had an impact, of course, but sometimes positive even. I think that even though there was a wide readership of Catalan readers, people who really wanted their books to be in Catalan, even if they could choose to have, talking about translations, for instance, I mean, they could choose to read their Julian Barnes or their Ian McEwan or whoever in Catalan or in Spanish. They wanted to do it in Catalan. I think that number increased in the no? Did you think so? Like in the last years, I also think that there's been an increase of interest in Catalan authors who write in Catalan. The media, the booksellers, they have paid a lot of attention to the young indie publishing houses. Also because the ones who are doing like a best job are also independent booksellers mostly in Barcelona, but also in Girona, in other cities, in Sabadell, in cities surrounding Barcelona and in the World Territory, basically. So I think, basically everything that's going on happening these years, it creates debate. And this is always positive for publishing industry, because that's one of the things we do is encouraging and the debate. And they were like, because in Barcelona, the whole Catalan system and the whole Spanish system, we live in the same space, no, in the same city. Like the headquarters of the Planeta Group are or used to be, I don't know anymore. They are physically there because they moved, no, at the end anyway. Physically, they are in Barcelona. So when the Penguin Random House, the huge group, the headquarters is in Barcelona. The CEO of the whole Spanish-speaking world is based in Barcelona. She lives there. Her office is there. So at the beginning, when some companies left Barcelona, blah, 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 the Planeta said as well, we will leave Barcelona, but what they just did is that they changed the city in where their VAT number was inscribed, no? Because they cannot move 1,000 or 2,000 people. I don't know how many people work in the Planeta building, and basically half of them feel very Catalan. Or more. I mean, so it was kind of crazy. So there's been controversy, but I also think I'm right, that publishing is a more reasonable world, so we all have colleagues who are very much in favor of independence or very much against independence, but they still talk to each other.
You're not like politicians.
I can't hear you, sorry. Exactly, not like politicians, not like politicians. Other effects, nothing comes to my mind, but I haven't, my job is the same. I represent the Spanish authors, I represent Catalan authors. I go to Madrid to meet publishers all the time. Maybe because I had very good books in the recent years, but I've sold all my Catalan authors into Spanish these last years precisely, not before. So I also think there's Permafrost, the book you are going to publish. It was sold to Penguin Random House, a big imprint, so they have Spanish-speaking authors who are very much against independence in their own list, no, in which Eva Baltasar is going to be published. So I think everybody's trying to keep politics where politics belong and literature where literature belongs. thought you were going. I thought you were going to make a question.
For us as an institution, we don't really like people to have the idea of Catalan authors being pro-independence or against independence. We're just promoting Catalan literature. It doesn't matter to us what the authors think about this subject or the other, because Catalan literature, it's more than wanting to be independent or not. It's a first-class worldwide literature, and that's it for us. And that's very important, because it's easy in situations so tense as the one that we are living now politically to start thinking, well, we are promoting Catalan literature, therefore we are promoting Catalan authors that are pro-independence, and that's not necessarily the case. Mm-hmm. And I don't want it to be the case. Each one of us has our own political views, but we promote Catalan literature. It doesn't matter what the authors think about I mean, I think it's rich that all of them express themselves in Catalan, and they have different views about the world, about our own country, about what they want for the future, etc.
Yeah, I mean, it was interesting because Alicia Kopp's Brother and I's came out in English last April, March, April. And so it was right in the middle of everything happening. And of course there was interest. People in the UK media were quite keen on her writing something about the political situation, and quite large circulation, magazine given away freely at tube stations with people who are interested in stylish things, mainly aimed at a women audience, called The Stylist. Commissioned something, but then it was, I guess, not as sort of simple and straightforward as what they were hoping for, and they didn't find that they could sort of use it then. And it is obviously a challenge for literary writers and, you know, the mainstream media, who maybe want something that it talks more directly about a situation than the writer wants to. And yeah, so it was funny. We thought maybe it would, in some way, be part of the book's launch, because it was all happening. But it didn't. In the end, it was sort of didn't really affect it. I think.
Hi, it's a question for both Bernat and for Stefan. When you pick a book to translate, what are you looking for? What do you think? Yes, this will resonate. What's the quality that you think this is going to travel well, this is going to work?
Well, I mean, I can only speak personally, and obviously every publisher is so different. Some publishers, particularly that are more commercially minded, have certain ideas, certain trends they want to think about, and that they can see where they can see a book might fit into something that's particularly of the moment. And I guess for our fiction list, it's really just things that seem to be doing something new, something really that is gripping as a book, but is also doing something new as an art form. And obviously that's a hard thing to say, is it this or is it this? And last year the Man Booker International judges didn't agree with us about Brother and I's. But that's the way we do it. So, yeah.
Yeah. No, for me as an agent, I'm very eclectic. So I'm not like you maybe looking into literary fiction, or you would not look into a thriller. You would not look into women's fiction, as to say that. I may look into other genres. So what I need is that the book, whatever the book is, be it a thriller, be it a literary novel, it just needs to move me. I mean, it just needs to be good in what it is. And then, yeah, well, little details, no? I mean, if it's like too local, or if the plot is constantly referring to many local things that only readers in Catalonia will understand, no? So you obviously see the problem, no, of taking that book in France, in Italy, or anywhere where no one will understand, no, what's going on. But apart from that, as you said at the beginning, I mean, I think the important thing about a book is that it's powerful. And when a book is powerful, it doesn't really, the origin of the book is not important. No? What's important is that it's a good book and that it can travel because of its own merits and skills.
And generally with translation costs being what they are and not fully covered by other people, something not too long is good. Someone was recommending me a Catalan book, which if I'm getting this right, it was maybe the author was called Pujol, and maybe it was called the
Pujol,
Jardín de Crepúsculo or something like that. I don't know what's
Al Jardí del Crepuscle. The title rings a bell, but I don't know.
Like the Crepuscular Garden or something like that. Anyway, and they said, "Oh, there's a German translation," and I said, "Oh, well, great, send me that. I can read that." And then the book came and it was that fat. So I was like, oh.
Yeah, that's scary. Yeah, that's something that, yeah, of course. I don't normally think about of that, but it's true that thick books are obviously for a publisher, for foreign publisher, are a challenge, basically, because they need to invest much more money. And
I wanted to say something about that. That's why at Institut Ramon Llull, the whole system of grants, it's conceived to make your numbers at the end of the day as if you were publishing a local author. That's the aim of the grants. So we're trying, like, the translation and the promotion, which is what makes a book much more expensive for a publisher, to not be so expensive. I mean, it's not 100%, but it's an important amount. So the idea is we didn't want to fund the whole thing because we are not in favor of you not risking your own money to publish a book, because otherwise you're not going to love your book. I mean, you have to make an investment as you do with your local authors, but it doesn't have to be more expensive. So the whole system is conceived to make it easier for you, as if it was an English or a Scottish book. So that makes things easier. But still, you have to want to publish this book. It's not something that it gets completely paid, therefore you don't mind if you publish it or not, so you're not going to love it.
I mean, even if a translation is 100% funded, it really just brings you back to the starting point with an English language author. You still have your other costs.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely, we understand that. But somehow, for us, that's healthy, because as a publisher, you decide you want to publish this book as if it was an English book. So you fall in love with it, and you want to put it in your catalog. But it's not more expensive than it would be if it was a book, if it was not a translation, but a book written originally in English. But still, there's a cost there. But we think that's healthy. I don't know if I make myself understand.
I mean, if, say, you get 60% of a translation funded, and that book is 200,000 words long, and you pay 40%, you're still basically, you could be paying the translator, I'm not doing the maths in my head right now, but it could be about £10,000 or something. £10,000 is a lot of money for a literary fiction book to make back, but yeah.
Anyway. Any other questions?
Or we could just talk individually afterwards with people.
Yeah, of course. That's for granted. If someone has a question or a comment, here we are. We are not running.
Last chance. Any other questions? No? All right. Well, thank you for coming.
Thanks so much.
Thanks.